the stars that don't burn. The Vrexi had always believed fire was sacred. It was a fragile, volatile gift, bound tightly to ritual. Their ancestors had learned, through stories and scars, that uncontrolled fire could devour everything. Fires in the kitchen were unknown. Fire in their labs was only the tiniest, regulated flame for chemical experiments. Fire for warmth or play was unthinkable. So when the human vessel Starbreaker descended through the crimson clouds of Vrexi Prime, the research outpost's sensors first registered them as a curiosity. Then the alarms went off. The crash wasn't subtle. A metallic roar shattered the thin ice crust over the outpost's landing pad, sending sparks from the hull scattering across the frozen expanse. Systems failed. The cold that the Vrexi had considered survivable now bit into exposed circuits and fragile flesh. The humans, sprawling across the debris, were laughing. They're laughing, whispered Jexel, a Vrexi engineer, his many eyes wide with disbelief. At a disaster. One human, broad-shouldered and soot-streaked, stood and waved an arm toward the wreckage. Sparks erupted from a welding torch they'd already activated. Another human rolled out a panel from the hull breach, slapped a smear of some sticky metal goo across it, and clapped. There, good as new. Jexel's companions froze. Fire. Sparks. Uncontrolled, roaring, dangerous fire, used casually, without hesitation. Their sacred taboo was being shattered before their eyes. A howl of wind swept across the plateau, and a shiver ran through the Vrexi's segmented spines. The humans didn't even flinch. They started dragging the frost-bitten Vrexi inside the mangled ship, laying them near improvised heaters that were literally open flames in metal containers. Jexel felt the first pulse of fear. If these creatures could handle fire with such reckless disregard, what could they do next? And then the human with the torch leaned too close to a storage of volatile experimental chemicals. Oops, they said, grinning. Don't worry, I got this. The cold was merciless. Vrexi lungs, adapted for warmth-controlled environments, flared in protest. They shivered and clicked, trying to understand the human's approach. A human knelt in the frost and hammered together a frame of scrap metal and tubing, feeding it with a portable flame from a handheld device. The resulting heater roared to life, blasting heat across the frigid outpost floor. This cannot be safe, hissed Jexel, watching a human poke the flames with a stick, laughing when sparks flew onto their own sleeve. Yet, remarkably, nothing exploded. Nothing burned apart. The humans moved through the wreckage like predators at play, improvising solutions at a speed and audacity that made the Vrexi tremble. Panels were duct-taped, hull seams welded, engines rigged with dangling open flames to prevent freezing. A loud cheer erupted whenever one of these improvisations worked. Vrexi hearts, if hearts were comparable, pounded in awe and terror. Their own carefully designed systems, programmed with centuries of safety algorithms, could barely keep warm. Yet these humans were bending reality with fire and laughter. But then a distant groaning echoed from the damaged hull. The outpost's main reactor was struggling. Sparks flew from exposed conduits, and the Vrexi realized that if the reactor failed, the entire facility would freeze solid in minutes. One human, noticing the electrical arcs, simply pulled a cable free, wrapped it in metal tape, and reconnected it. A small flame burst as a spark hit, but the reactor stabilized. Jexel felt a cold, creeping terror. They're controlling it by accident, he murmured. Another cheer erupted from the humans. We're warming this place up, one shouted. Nothing can stop us. And just as Jexel tried to comprehend the madness, a distant, low rumble shook the outpost. Something was coming, something big. It wasn't just the cold. Outside, the frozen winds howled like banshees. Vrexi's sensors detected shifting ice. A glacier field was cracking dangerously close to the outpost. A massive tremor rocked the floor, sending unsecured equipment tumbling. The humans reacted instantly. One grabbed a container of oil, set it aflame, and used it to weld two bulkheads together. Another rolled into the mess with duct tape and a metal crowbar, sealing gaps and holding up fallen support beams. Every move seemed reckless, but every move worked. Jexel felt the first prick of genuine fear. These humans were not merely surviving. They were reshaping disaster into triumph. Their improvisation was incomprehensible. Then the tremors stopped. Silence descended. and with it, a faint, sinister groan from the outer hull. The outpost communications array had fractured. The humans were already on it, connecting frayed wires with laughter and curses, feeding heat into circuits that the Vrexi would have considered incineration-level dangerous. You can't just do that," a Vrexi scientist shrieked. "The energy. The fire." The human looked up, wiping soot from their cheek. "Relax," they said cheerfully. "We got this." And then, a scream. Not from the humans. From the reactor room. A plume of smoke burst out, and the flames inside went wild. The humans ran in, tools in hand, shouting instructions that seemed like gibberish. Jexel's gaze widened. "They will die. They will die." Yet when the smoke cleared, the humans emerged, singed but grinning. The reactor was stable. Even more baffling, they were singing a victory chant, pounding on metal panels as if they'd won a war. Outside, the ice field began shifting again. A massive slab threatened to crush the outpost entirely, and the humans were heading straight for it. The humans didn't hesitate. They climbed the unstable ice, rigging pulleys and welding metal plates as they went, singing and laughing all the while. The Vrexi, frozen in shock, realized something impossible. The humans were not afraid of the glacier's weight. They moved with a chaotic coordination that seemed almost instinctive. Jexel tried to understand. "They are suicidal or invincible," he whispered to a fellow Vrexi. A human yanked a massive ice block aside with a rope and shouted, "Teamwork, people. This baby's coming down, and we're going to make it dance." Sparks flew from torches, and the ice cracked in half, sliding harmlessly past the outpost. The Vrexi stared in horror and awe. Nothing in their culture allowed such recklessness. Nothing they had ever experienced prepared them for fire-wielding humans, grinning as they danced across death. But then, disaster struck, literally. A section of the outpost's roof, weakened by the crash, collapsed onto one of the humans. Time slowed for the Vrexi. They froze as the massive weight bore down. And yet, moments later, the human emerged, climbing out from under the wreckage with soot-streaked laughter. "You call that a problem?" "Amateur stuff," they shouted, dusting themselves off and already moving to another task. Jexel realized something terrifying. They weren't calculating risk, they ignored it. Yet somehow, through chaos and improvisation, they survived everything. A low, clicking growl of awareness passed through the Vrexi minds. The humans were rewriting the rules of survival. Over the next days, the humans transformed the wrecked outpost into a fortress of fire and ingenuity. They patched hull breaches with tape, welded panels from debris, and converted alien tech into heaters. Every effort was loud, chaotic, and seemingly reckless. The Vrexi, watching from corners and shadows, gradually realized something astounding. The humans never failed. No matter how bizarre or improvised their methods, each attempt succeeded. They cooked meals over open flames while the Vrexi huddled in cold, poorly lit corners. They rigged mechanical devices with duct tape and laughter, creating warmth that the Vrexi had thought impossible. Jexel attempted to record their techniques. Step by step, he documented every move. Yet, the more he documented, the more he noticed something terrifying. Many of the solutions weren't deliberate. Some were accidents. Some were playful experiments. Some were mistakes that accidentally solved problems in ways no Vrexi mind could calculate. A human laughed, throwing sparks into the icy air. Well, that's one way to do it. Jexel felt a cold dread seep into his core. These creatures didn't just adapt, they thrived in chaos. Their survival didn't come from logic or rules. It came from embracing unpredictability and using it as a weapon. And then the humans gathered around a broken communications array, preparing to broadcast a message. But as they activated the makeshift transmitter, the Vrexi saw a sudden, blinding spark, and then the signal was gone. The humans weren't discouraged. They laughed louder. "Okay, let's try Plan B," one shouted, tossing a torch into the circuitry. Sparks flew, lights blinked erratically, and then, miraculously, the transmitter hummed to life, sending a clear signal across the planet. The Vrexi were stunned. Every step had been uncalculated, every movement a gamble. Yet here they were, broadcasting a message into space with fire, improvisation, and sheer audacity. Jexel realized that the humans' danger was not just their recklessness, it was their creativity under chaos. They didn't just survive, they reshaped the environment itself. Every risk became an opportunity, every mistake a solution, every laugh a weapon against entropy. And yet, even as the Vrexi began to admire them, a gnawing terror remained. What had they not anticipated? What disaster, by some twist of chaos, would finally end them? A sudden roar shook the outpost. Outside, the ice cliffs above the plateau had fractured, a massive avalanche barreling toward them. The humans didn't hesitate. They raced to the edge of the outpost, dragging improvised barriers, swinging torches, and shouting in unison. Sparks flew in the darkness, lighting the avalanche with dancing fire. They welded scrap metal into barricades. They danced across the ice, lashing ropes and guiding falling slabs. The Vrexi watched in helpless terror, expecting the humans to be crushed, incinerated, or buried. And then, in the most impossible moment, it happened. The avalanche hit, and the humans were fine. The fire and metal diverted the ice, redirecting the destruction away from the outpost. Humans cheered. They hugged, laughed, and high-fived each other, utterly unharmed. Jexel staggered back, awestruck. They are not governed by fear, by rules, or by protocol, he whispered. They are unstoppable. They do not survive disasters. They redefine them. A human tossed a flaming piece of scrap into the night sky, and it arced like a comet, sparks trailing into the black. That's how you do it, they shouted, grinning at the Vrexi. The Vrexi realized, finally, that their sacred rules, their careful control of fire and risk, had no bearing here. Humans didn't need permission from ritual, or calculations, or centuries of caution. They carried chaos like a weapon, and in it, they were gods. Jexel's eyes, wide and unblinking, followed the flaming arc into the stars. The stars, they don't burn, he murmured. Humans do. And for the first time, the Vrexi felt true fear, because nothing in their universe could prepare them for creatures who thrived on chaos, fire, and laughter, leaving order in their wake.